As well today, Julian Assange is in our headlines. He's in a London courtroom this morning, finally facing an extradition hearing. The United States wants Assange to stand trial there, nearly a decade after he published classified U.S. military documents online. His case is being watched very closely by rights groups and supporters, and our Briar Stewart has been talking to them outside the courthouse this morning. She's live with us now. Briar, good to see you this morning. What is the scene there behind you today?
Good morning. Well, where I am, Heather, is right in front of the courthouse, but on the other side of me, behind a barricade, and you may be able to hear them, there's about 100 or so protesters. They've been here for a few hours already this morning. They're very committed. The weather here is not great. It's pretty chilly and rainy, but they're out there with their signs and their banners, and they are loyal supporters of Julian Assange, the WikiLeaks founder, and they wanted to be here for the start of the extradition hearing because they really see him as an advocate for freedom of the press and transparency, and they believe that this whole extradition process, as they describe it, is a witch hunt. Take a listen to what some of them had to say.
Julian Assange is fighting for freedom, for truth. He's given us the option to choose our leaders and to support them based on what they actually do on our name and with our money. He's shown us the truth and he's suffering for that. He's a political prisoner. He shouldn't be in prison for a day. He's the one who exposed the war criminals. They should be in jail.
We have to do everything we can to avoid his extradition, because once he's extradited, I don't think he has the slightest chance of having anything close to a fair trial.
So that's how his supporters see him. Of course, the other side of this is that some see him as reckless, someone who, willingly put out classified information, which the U.S. government officials had described as being endangering national security and diplomatic relations. As you mentioned, this all stems back to 2010, when the military video that showed an attack by an Apache helicopter that killed 10 people, in addition to 2 journalists in Iraq, that was put out there, as well as hundreds of thousands of diplomatic cables. And that's really what's at the crux of this. And that's why Assange is facing an 18-count indictment that includes conspiracy to hack into a computer and violations under the espionage law. This has been going on for quite a few years. And for the bulk of that time, Assange has actually been holed up inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where he was granted asylum. He was there until last year. That's because at that point, the relationship between he and the country of Ecuador broken down. His asylum was revoked and he was arrested, and that really kicked off the beginning of this formal extradition process.
And we remember that well. We were live as he was escorted out of that embassy building that morning that he was arrested. It's all leading up to today. So yes, we do hear very clearly the protests going on behind you and his supporters as they make their presence known, Briar. Inside that courtroom, what exactly should we be watching for and expecting today?
Well, this part of the extradition hearing is going to last 1 week, and this week is really going to be focused on the legal arguments. So we're going to hear from Assange's lawyers and also the lawyers representing American authorities. Assange's lawyers are going to be making the case that this whole thing is political, that it's an abusive process, and they've also signaled that they're going to be calling anonymous witnesses, and that's something that the lawyers for the American authorities say they are going to oppose. This is just the first part. The second part of his extradition hearing isn't going to be until May. That's when really we're going to hear some of the evidence that is against him. But as I said, this has been dragging on for quite some time. It's going to take a long process still. But in the end, if he is extradited to the States and if he stands trial there and is convicted, he could face decades in prison.
Briar, thank you very much. We'll check back with you through the morning as well. Briar Stewart covering the Assange court proceedings for us today.